Go ahead and start. I want to say good morning to you all and thank you for joining us for the American Indian Alaska Native Tourism Association's webinar series. Today, our educational webinar is in partnership with the George Washington University. We have our guest speakers here today to speak on the information session and Indigenous Marketing Spotlight, Professional Certificate in Cultural Heritage Tourism. My name is Sherry Bowman. I'm from the Pueblo of Laguna, and I serve as the Education Support Specialist for AIANTA. For those of you who are new to AIANTA, we provide technical assistance and training to tribal nations and Native-owned enterprises engaged in tourism, hospitality, and recreation. Our mission is to define, introduce, grow, and sustain American Indian, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian tourism that honors traditions and values. Part of our training includes our Cultural Heritage Tourism Program. Today's information session is on the Professional Certificate in Cultural Heritage Tourism offered by George Washington University, International Institute of Tourism Studies in partnership with AIANTA. This 7-week online program provides tourism entrepreneurs and community leaders with the tools to identify and develop tourism assets. During this information session, you will be provided with an overview of the program content, structure, and time commitment. Session participants will have the opportunity to hear from one of the program instructors, Talia Salem, who teaches the tourism marketing course. Ms. Salem will provide a case study showing how an Indigenous tourism department pivoted their marketing efforts during the pandemic as a preview of the tourism marketing course topics and learning objectives. There will be an opportunity for Q&A following the presentation. Visit our website at aianta.org to learn more information about our education program offerings and to register for the CTTE course. I would like to remind you to please put your questions in the Q&A or the chat, and we will answer them at the end of the presentation. Again, thank you for joining us today for this information session webinar on the GW information session and Indigenous Marketing Spotlight, Professional Certificate in Cultural Heritage Tourism. I am pleased to introduce you to our speakers today, Anna Barrera, a sustainable tourism and hospitality consultant for the George Washington University. Anna Barrera is a sustainable tourism and hospitality consultant with professional experience in strategic planning, product development, marketing, and capacity building. Anna has a passion for working with Indigenous tourism organizations to drive economic development in Native communities. Over the last 6 years, she has worked with George Washington University and the American Indian Alaska Native Tourism Association, the OCO Group, the St. Regis Mohawk Tribe, and the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes, among others, and a variety of Native American tourism development initiatives, including capacity building, digital marketing, and destination management strategies. Anna is currently engaged in a tour production development initiative with the 5 Nations of North Dakota as a research scholar with George Washington University through the support of the Bureau of Indian Affairs. She also serves as program manager for the Cultural Heritage Tourism Program. Talia Salem, marketing and tourism consultant with the Urban Nomad based in San Francisco. Talia Salem has more than a dozen years of experience in tourism, destination marketing, and content strategy. She runs her own marketing and tourism firm, the Urban Nomad, which helps travel organizations connect with their target audience through compelling content, excel at destination marketing, and leverage sustainable tourism. She has worked with such clients as the World Wildlife Fund, Virginia Tech, the World Bank, George Washington's University, International Institute of Tourism Studies, Charlottesville, and Albee Marine Convention and Visitors Bureau, the Center for Responsible Travel, A2B Consulting, and Akwesasne Travel. Talia also serves as a board member for Leave No Trace Center for Outdoor Ethics. Before consulting, she worked as a manager of social content for the brand USA, the USA's official destination marketing organization and public-private partnership dedicated to increasing international visitation. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Anna and let her take it from here. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you, Sherry, and good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to transition to the presentation here. So this is an information session in Marketing Spotlight, as Sherry mentioned. We already went over Talia and my bios, but I just want to let you know that there is a broader team behind the Professional Certificate in Cultural Heritage Tourism. Our executive director of the International Institute of Tourism Studies could not join us today, but she is one of the professors. We're lucky to have her in the program. Selene Matus teaches tourism resilience in uncertain times. That's the second course. Also on the line as a participant in today's information session is Matthew Azuna. I'm thrilled to say that he'll be taking on carrying the torch forward as the program manager of this program. Matt has an incredible background in digital marketing, in tourism advocacy, tourism data collection, and he has a particular passion in racial equity and justice issues. This kind of really diverse background makes him perfectly suited for running with this program. After the information session today, he'll be your point of contact for any questions or concerns around the program, and we'll be running future information sessions. Also on the GW team is Archana Prasad, a program associate. You'll see her name in relation to some of the registration details. She'll be the one contacting you at the end of the program to send your certificate, and any kind of payment or payment questions or concerns are routed through Archana. And then as Sherry introduced, I'm on the line with Talia Salem today. She's been our instructor of the very popular tourism marketing course within the program, and she's been with us since the program started in 2017, and an incredible resource for all things tourism marketing related. So really excited to have her on the line. For any kind of questions about the program going forward, you can reach any of us through the culturaltourism@gw.edu email address, so please do keep that handy. Today, as Sherry mentioned, we'll be talking about the program structure, content. I'll hand it over to Talia to give a little spotlight on a special case study on one tribe who's done a really incredible job kind of pivoting their marketing efforts during COVID, so you can get a feel for the course content, and then we'll open it up to questions. So let's take it from the top. I want to provide an overview of the program. The certificate program is all delivered online, meaning that there's no in-person component of this program. It's targeted towards American Indian, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian participants. Typically, we have a really great constellation of folks who work in the tourism space or in a tertiary capacity to tourism. So we often get participants that work in cultural centers and museums, who may work at casinos, who work in tribal administrations as tribal planners or natural resource representatives, and other kind of related capacities. And we also have a number of partners of American Indian, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian tourism stakeholders. So we get a lot of federal partners represented in the program, folks that are interested in understanding how to better support Indigenous tourism development. The program is delivered over a 7-week period. There's 6 courses. 1 course is delivered each week, and there's a break week in the middle of the program. Because of the dates for next year, May 2nd to June 16th, there'll be 4 consecutive courses or 4 consecutive weeks, then a break week over the Memorial Day holiday, and then we'll finish the last 2 courses running into mid-June. It's an entirely self-directed program, meaning even the live sessions that are pre-scheduled are recorded. So the entire kind of coursework can be condensed into about 6 hours of flexible time each week. And so it's up to you when you, how you kind of address the needs of the program, readings and lunchtime or during after work hours and evenings, totally up to you and very flexible. You'll have a Monday to Sunday night, midnight Eastern Standard Time to complete your coursework each week, and how you put in those 6 hours is entirely up to you. And then upon successful completion of the requirements of the program, you will earn a professional certificate, which will be mailed to you from the George Washington University. This is a non-credit, non-degree program, but it is, you will get a grade report showing that you've taken and completed the course and received that certificate as a credential. Here are the dates for next year's program. So as I mentioned, it starts on May 2nd. So the first course is Intro to Cultural Heritage Tourism. It gives an overview, and I'll go into a little bit more detail in a few minutes on the key points within each course. The second course is Tourism Resilience in Uncertain Times. The third course is Tourism Planning and Management. The fourth course is Community-Based Tourism Product Development. And then here's your break week, followed by Tourism Marketing, the course that Talia offers, and last but not least is Workforce Development. So as I mentioned, Monday through Sunday is the time allotted for each course. This is how the 7 weeks are laid out because of the Memorial Day holiday next year. And all course content will be available on our Blackboard learning management system. I mentioned about 6 hours of coursework required for each of the 6 courses. So how that's usually broken down, and this is an approximation, is that we have a live lecture to kick off each course. That live lecture is usually scheduled on Mondays, and last year we had it in the evenings, Eastern Standard Time. So our friends on the West Coast would attend in the 5 o'clock range. So it was 8 o'clock Eastern time. That timeline might shift a little bit next year. I think Matt is intending to kind of poll the participants in the program to see what time works best for the cohort. And again, all of the live lectures are recorded, so you can go back and listen to them if you're not able to attend live. So there's a live main lecture that covers the main content of that course. And then you can go online and access the readings. The readings span from research papers to current articles on the topic, to case studies. It's all facilitated by the instructors who hand select those readings to accompany their lecture. Usually midweek, during each course week, we have a guest lecture that's provided by an Indigenous practitioner. And I'll give you a sample of the past guest lectures here in a bit. That lecture also lasts about an hour, and that's followed by a discussion board. The discussion board is an online, facilitated discussion with your cohort and your instructors. So the instructor provides a prompt or a question that's related to the guest lecture, and then all of the participants have an opportunity to weigh in on that prompt or discussion, have a really rich discussion to kind of further your understanding of the course content topics. And then last but not least, there is a course assignment each week that takes about an hour and a half. We have really strived to make the assignment a really practical and relevant part of this program. So we, in the last 2 years, have shifted the assignments to consider a tourism related project that you have in mind and use the coursework to build out that project or concept, and weave in the main ideas from each course to build it as a cumulative kind of takeaway from this program. So that might be a business concept or a business plan that's tourism related. It might be a partnership concept or a partnership plan in the tourism space. that the instructors can really work with you to kind of hone in on that idea and make the coursework as relevant to your career objectives as possible. And then last but not least is the course evaluation that caps each week. So we like to collect really quick data on how the participants felt about the coursework, their instructors and guest speakers, so that we can optimize this program for all future participants. You know, we always get a lot of questions on grades. This is a pass-fail program. To receive your certificate, you must complete and pass all of the 6 assignments and 6 discussion boards. What that means is that we have a grading matrix. I believe there's 9 total points allocated to each assignment. You have to earn 6 of those 9 points. And that's just to demonstrate that you understand the key topics, have kind of reached the learning objectives, and are applying kind of critical thinking to the assignments and fulfill all components of that assignment. Same with the discussion board. We really think that the energy that you put into this program is commensurate with what you get out of the program. And so look for that discussion board to drive kind of critical thinking and a lot of engagement with your participants. So we're just looking for participants to apply their learnings each week to that discussion board and engage with their fellow participants. Grades are usually posted 2 weeks after each course close, and we do try to keep you abreast of any outstanding assignments or discussion boards and help stay in close touch with you throughout the program to make sure that any gaps are filled by the end of the program. So I mentioned that I wanted to give you kind of a feel for the instructors and guest speakers. All of our instructors are experts in their fields, and all of the guest speakers are Indigenous practitioners who have a lot of relevant experience applying these course topics or concepts into Indigenous contexts. So our first course is Introduction to Cultural Heritage Tourism. Judy Walden is a heritage tourism specialist working out of Colorado. She spent decades consulting on various tourism development projects, has significant experience working with Indigenous communities on tourism development. She's been working the past few years with Dorothy Firecloud as her guest speaker. Dorothy actually was a participant in one of the early cohorts of this cultural certificate program. And she, in the past, was superintendent at two different national park sites. And now she's a liaison on behalf of the National Park Service, Native American Affairs liaison, and has really rich kind of takeaways from her work within that guest speaker slot. So the second course is Tourism Resilience in Uncertain Times. Selene Matches, our executive director, instructs that course. Selene has really deep experience working with Indigenous communities here in the United States and abroad on tourism development issues, has a lot of case studies to bring to the table, especially around adjustments made in amid COVID-19 pandemic and how tribes have been transitioning their tourism planning. She has worked with Melvin Wanico at Acoma Pueblo, Sky City Cultural Center and Heku Museum operations manager to talk about how they've pivoted during COVID-19 to bring a lot of their offerings online and keep their community safe. Third course is Tourism Planning and Management. That's taught by Dr. Kristen Lamoureux. She's the professor of tourism studies at Virginia Tech University and prior executive director at the International Institute of Tourism Studies at GW. Kristen is currently working with Montana tribes on Indigenous tourism development. She has really deep experience working with AIANTA and other tribes throughout the United States on tourism planning. She's usually joined by Ivan Sorbel, executive director of Pine Ridge Area Chamber of Commerce. This is a pretty unique model for bringing kind of tourism planning under one of the first Indigenous chambers in the United States, and he offers a really great perspective on how to undertake tourism planning on behalf of the tribe in that context. The fourth course is community-based tourism product development. We have Matthew Humke, who is a product specialist out of Guatemala. Matt has his own trekking company based in Guatemala and has been working on tourism product development as a consultant for the better part of the last 20 years. And he typically brings in Penny Peters, our tourism industry development manager out of Akwesasne, the St. Regis Mohawk tribe, and to talk about the work that they've done together to build tourism experiences in their community on the border of upstate New York and Canada. The fifth course is tourism marketing. Talia will talk a little bit about more about that in a second. Talia has been working on tourism marketing again for the better part of the last decade, probably longer, Talia, and she's a principal at the Urban Nomad, her own consulting shop, and she was joined last year by Sebastian Desnoyer Picard, Director of Marketing, Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada, ITAC, which you may be familiar with. And Sebastian is a great resource out of the US on what other communities are doing there to market their offerings and how they've worked as a collective to really make a big impact within ITAC. And lastly, we have workforce development that's led by Diane Wallace, customer relations educator and tour operator. So she brings a constellation of different professional experiences to the table. This course is kind of a combination between customer service best practices and internal workforce leadership skills, cultivating a strong workforce. And the last guest speaker, Hilani Shibata, has been with us since day one. She is a native Hawaiian hospitality expert and does an incredible job bringing cultural protocols to the hospitality and tourism development space and how that can be integrated into all things tourism. So it's not about kind of overlaying kind of disparate pieces. You know, the culture should be woven throughout the tourism planning process. And she's, I think, the best example we have in how that could be done. Okay, so I just want to touch on a few other kind of key topics in each of these courses. I've kind of given you a little bit about each of the speakers and the approach that they bring, but just kind of some of the key takeaways in the introduction to cultural tourism. We talk about the different types of tourism out there in addition to cultural tourism that may be considered. We bring in a lot of tourism data and statistics that we have around domestic and international Indigenous tourism. We talk about cultural tourism considerations and challenges, kind of, is this the right fit for your community and how do you weigh that? Judy Walden has what she calls the 3-3 sleep model, which is a really interesting needs assessment for your community or community that you're looking to work with on what the gaps are and how to approach those gaps. And then she's typically brought in a number of case studies, some agricultural, agritourism related from Indigenous practitioners. Tourism resilience really discusses the impact of COVID-19 on Indigenous tourism development. You know, from what are visitors expecting from their destinations now in this new normal? What are the adjusted expectations around health and safety, around product, and how do you make adjustments to your tourism planning based on those new expectations? And how do we plan for future risks, whether those are health related or not? What has this taught us about how we move forward in tourism planning? Third, tourism planning and management. Kristen leads the cohort through how do you approach tourism planning with your community? How do you identify stakeholders who should be at the table? How do you undertake kind of the visioning and then the strategic planning initiatives from there? She also talks about how to create tourism management models, both public-private partnerships and private collaborations, and what might be the best fit for your community or planning effort. Then in the product development course, Matt does a wonderful job talking about how data should inform tourism product design. So thinking through your key target markets and how to fit a product that matches your target market. He also talks about how to design that product and test it once it's designed. And then last but not least, how do you think through sustainable versus unsustainable tourism development? I will just briefly touch on Talia's course, and she'll be going into kind of more detail spotlighting a case study. In tourism marketing, Talia gives a great overview of the travel trade ecosystem. Within tourism, it's a pretty complicated chain of actors. And so she gives a really nice overview of who the key players are, the types of members of the ecosystem, from tour operators to travel agents to destinations, and how they all work together to actually deliver tourism experience. She talks about market segmentation, marketing to the travel trade, and then does a bit of a deeper dive on digital marketing. And in the last course, Diane talks about tourism training, common pitfalls and customer service, organizational management, how to build a really healthy organizational culture, talks a little bit about really shining examples of customer service, and some customer service examples we can all learn from, with drawing from key case studies and organizational leaders. So now I'd love to pivot and give the stage to Talia to talk more in detail about an Akwesasne case study.
Okay, thanks, Anna, and thanks everyone for joining. Feel free to ask questions throughout. If anything I'm sharing is not making sense or whatever, I want to make sure that you are following along. So just a little bit more about me. I am now based in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I've been in the travel industry for almost 15 years now. I work with tourism brands and destinations on destination marketing and storytelling specifically. And I worked at the US Tourism Board, Brand USA, before this, working on everything that was visittheusa.com. I also speak French and Arabic. I'm a first generation Palestinian Jordanian American. So I do have try to have a lot of sensitivity to different groups as I do my marketing and different populations, and I've been leaning more into that work lately. So if you want to go to the next slide. So I've been working with Akwesasne Travel for several years now, along with Anna, and we worked on, prior to this project, launching their website and a couple of other different things for them, like their brand. And leading up to the pandemic and kind of throughout the pandemic, we were thinking about, how to develop tourism product. One of the challenges of many Indigenous destinations is there's not a lot of product for people to experience. So they do want to welcome tourists, but how are those tourists going to spend their money? Where are they going to go? What are they going to do while they're there? So we worked really closely with a Akwesasne Travel team on actually developing those experiences, which was not my area of the project, but Matt, actually one of the instructors, worked on developing the tourism product itself. And then my part of the project was actually helping to market those products and experiences and get them out there into the marketplace. So I sort of created this little marketing strategy for them, which I'll go through with you. And this is more academic than we actually approached it, but just to illustrate how we put this together. So the goal was really to launch, to get exposure for the virtual tours and in-person tours. And this is one big shift that they decided to make during the pandemic. So we were always planning on having an in-person tour product where people will actually go to Akwesasne. But during the pandemic, their reservation, like many others, were actually closed, and so they couldn't welcome tourists. So we decided to also help train some of those entrepreneurs and other ones on offering virtual tours. So that was one big shift. One of the ways that we decided to help drive interest and traffic to that is to really build out a cultural tour page on the website. And our goal was to try to get 1,000 visitors to that cultural tour page and group bookings. So about 10 group bookings over the course of the next year. I want to go to the next slide. So I've just kind of put together a sort of marketing action plan for the team. We didn't necessarily do all of these things yet, but these are some things that are still on the horizon or that we did for them as part of the project. And this might help you visualize how you might be able to do this in your destination. So if you have a goal and you can kind of set out how you would do different milestones to accomplish that goal of driving traffic and getting bookings. So the first thing you want to do, especially when talking about digital marketing, is you want to make sure that you have your tracking in place. You would want to set up something like Google Analytics, or if you're using social media, making sure that you have it set up properly in Facebook or whatever channel you're using. Also want to create a new content strategy. So thinking about how you're actually talking about those products, making sure that you're using the same language and terminology. So I worked on writing landing pages and promotional copy for each of those different tours and positioning those tours within the marketplace of all the tours that are out there. So talking about why these tours were special, highlighting the fact that these tours were actually offered by members of the community. So it's Indigenous storytelling by Indigenous people, not about Indigenous people, which is a very big issue in the tourism space. So making sure that those entrepreneurs actually have ownership of their story. So all the content was actually run by them before it was live. You want to click to the next slide. The other thing that we did working with another consultant, Casey, is we organized press and fam trips for journalism and the travel trade. So when we're looking at marketing strategy, digital is not enough. So you have to also think about the people side of the business and trying to get those sort of key opinion leaders or people that are in the industry to be aware of your product, or people that are actually going to sell your product. So we had journalists come out to the destination and actually experience the tours themselves. They posted about it online, they wrote articles about it, and had other exposure, which I'll talk about at the end. And then in tandem, we also added content to the website, which we'll show you in a second. And we used the opportunity of the fam trips to actually hire photographers so they could come out and experience the tours and actually capture content for the product. We also added a new email marketing template, started to collect more email addresses, which will be an ongoing effort for the team there, and try to engage with local businesses. We ran the fan trips. We put together a social media marketing plan, which I'll share a little bit of. We published new content on the different channels. We haven't done a paid Facebook campaign yet, but that's one of the goals, is we've done organic campaign, but once they have a marketing budget, they would likely put some paid effort behind a Facebook campaign to get more awareness of these products. And then at the end of this campaign, which is not done yet, they would want to track everything via Facebook, Google Analytics, Instagram, so they could see how they did and they can improve for next time and future campaigns. So here's an example of how we actually changed their homepage. So when we first built the website, we actually didn't have cultural tours on there. So we actually did some reorganization, and then we built out this landing page. If you click on the landing page itself, you'll learn about the cultural tours program itself and what they're offering. And then you'll also see the different tours, and we talk about actually custom group tours and things like that. And if you click on one of the tours themselves, you'll see some imagery and a tour description, and then who the hosts are, what's included, etc., and then some bookings. And then we've also linked to their virtual tour. So there's cross connectivity between the in-person and the virtual tours. So the nice thing about that, not all the tours match up this way, but like for the Native North American Traveling College, people can actually take their virtual tour to decide, am I going to go to Akwesasne? Will I want to learn more about this product? And then take their in-person tour, which of course is much better because you're there and you get to actually touch some of the objects, meet some of the people. So it's a lot more immersive, and learn how to say some words of Mohawk, which is always really fun. Next slide. So here's some examples of some of the social media promotions they did and actually how they partnered with nearby travel destinations. So Cornwall tourism is actually the destination on the other side of the river from them in Canada. So they're right on the border of Akwesasne on the Canadian side. And we worked really closely with Cornwall Tourism, both on the FAMs and on marketing. And so through that partnership, they were actually able to promote the virtual tours and eventually the in-person tours. And this post was exposed to their target audience, which was great because it's also similar to our target audience, which is, drive market, which is really helpful. And then we also did a post earlier on in the project last summer promoting traditional lacrosse's virtual tour, which was one of the earlier virtual tours to go on the platform. And the really cool thing about this post is it was organic, but because lacrosse has sort of like a very niche following on social media, it was shared 90 times, which is huge. And so a lot of people in different lacrosse groups and things like that shared it. So it got a reach of, this is probably bigger now, but like around 13,000 people, which is really huge for organic posts. So that's one of the cool things about social media is if you tap into those micro audiences, you can see how your content can go really far. So here's just a sample workflow that we put together for them. This is, of course, based on their team, their target audiences, and their staff. It's really important to match your workflow to your staff because you have to actually have people to get it done. So we talked about working up to 2 social posts a week, writing 1 article a month about different topics. So about the cultural tours, about their culture, food experiences, various things that we have as part of their content strategy. We also wanted to work up to having 1 newsletter a month. So that doesn't mean that every newsletter goes to everybody, but actually having a leisure newsletter that would go to tourists. And then you have sort of like a business newsletter that goes to people who might sell the tours or different partners within the destination, like the hotels. And then an internal newsletter that talks about, talks to stakeholders within Akwesasne. So if we're going to try to get that work done, roughly speaking, you would have, week 1, you think about the content planning and kind of forward looking to the next few months, what we're actually writing about. Then week 2, whoever's writing the article would actually write the article and get it approved. Week 3, you'd push that content out. And week 4, you'd push out the newsletter. So that's just roughly how we've organized it for them. And then of course, their team would take that and kind of customize it and make it theirs. We also published some collateral as well, which you can see on the right-hand side that was specific for the virtual tours. And that would be more done on an annual basis or as things change. So that's part of the marketing plan, but it's not as intensive as, the digital content planning that you'll see here that would happen on a monthly and weekly basis. Next slide. So we also put together a sample social schedule that would reinforce the cultural tours, but also just reinforce the overall product that they have in Akwesasne. So this was not meant to be that they would be posting 5 times a day, but that they would sort of develop content franchises for different days of the week. So when they had something to post about culture, they would post about that on Monday using these hashtags Mohawk Spirit and Monday Mood. On Tuesdays, they would post about tours and partners because that's when people really post about travel online for the overall hashtag of Travel Tuesday. It's not unique to them. On Wednesday, we wanted to showcase the local art and artisans. Art and sort of creativity is a really big part of the culture in Akwesasne. And every time I go there, I always come home with either new jewelry or new works of art or something. So there's a lot of creativity there. So on Wednesday, we wanted to make sure we highlighted those individual artisans and their work. On Thursday, we wanted to focus on history and kind of older content. We wanted to make sure to only keep that to 1 day a week because we wanted to really reinforce the message that Akwesasne is actually a thriving community with a lot to look forward to. It's not just a destination that used to exist. A lot of times when the Mohawk people or other Indigenous people are covered, it's sort of like these people used to live here, but they're not there anymore. And so we really wanted to make sure that, this is not just something in a museum. This is something that these are people that are here, they're creating, they're innovating. So we're making sure that we talk about the history, but we don't only talk about the history. So that's why it's only on Thursdays. And then on Fridays, we talk about food and sort of the culture behind food. So with the symbology of different fruit or different vegetables, like we talked about maple syrup and the importance of that. Also strawberries for strawberry season. So things like that. On the next slide, you'll see an example of a Travel Tuesday post, which talks about the different tours that we're offering. And you can see in here that there's a photo of one of the tours there, and you can tell that there's someone that's in the tour, that's at the tour that's really learning about the creation story here. We can see in the background. Next slide. So far this program's not over, but it's always important to think about the results and what's been accomplished. The team has really worked very hard and we're incredibly proud of them for these accomplishments. So we've been supporting them, but it's really important to note they're not on the call. They did a really amazing job. They worked really closely with all their partners and pulled this off. So they completed 2 FAM tours, actually, one on the US side and one on the Canadian side, which is so fun. But because their location is actually both in Canada and in the US, there's some border crossing issues, especially because of COVID. So they had to do 2 different FAM trips, which was great to reach those different audiences whose people may not want to cross the border or may not be able to, depending on COVID restrictions. So that's why we separated them out. So it was twice the effort to make both of those tours. They've also so far booked 2 group tours, which is really awesome since the FAM was only a couple months ago. They've also had several articles written about them and an interview with CDC Ottawa and other publications. So it's pretty impressive so far, and hopefully they'll get more notoriety for what they're doing. So that's what I have to share with you. I know it's kind of a very condensed version of our efforts, but hopefully it'll give you a sense of what types of things you'll be learning about in my course. So I'll be talking about things like target audiences, so who you're trying to reach with their messaging, content strategies, so how are you talking about your product. With this cultural heritage tourism program, I really focus on ownership of storytelling as well. So, what stories are you sharing with the public? Who is telling those stories? Making sure that you think about the implication of sharing certain things out with the public, because once things are out there, they're out there. I also talk about marketing channels and a lot of other different things in the course. So I will leave it there for now in case people have any questions.
Thanks, Talia. Talia and the other instructors do a really great job of bringing their practical work experience into the virtual classroom. So this was one case study that we do like to bring in because it's recent. It was affected by COVID. It has a lot of relevance to not only the cultural heritage tourism side of the course, but also the new reality that we live in now, and how planning has adapted to the new pandemic that we all have lived through. So I hope that this was a good taste of the type of content that you'd be seeing in the course or throughout the courses, and how we like to present that content, which is all presentation based like this, and kind of live Zoom format, where you would have an opportunity for Q&A with all the instructors twice a week during the main lecture and guest lecture. So the last slide I have for you today is the registration details, program fees. The course per person is $2,725 for AIANTA members. You do get a $50 discount if you are an AIANTA member. For non-members, the cost is $2,775. We usually cut off registration a week before, at least a week before the program opens. So the soft timing is April 18th, 2022. And the registration link can be accessed here. I can also drop it in the chat if anybody's interested. But Talia and I have some time here to answer any questions. I know she has a hard stop, I think, 10 before the hour, Talia? So she has about 5 minutes on the line if we want to prioritize questions for Talia, but I can certainly stay to the top of the hour and answer any other program related questions. I do see one question, whether the slides will be available after the presentation. What I will likely do is remove the slides around the Akwesasne case study, pending permission to use that content in hard form for distribution, but I can share all of the programmatic details after the program and send those to Sherry for distribution. Thank you, Anna. An anonymous attendee asked if this program is good for people just getting into tourism or if there's any prerequisites. Great question. The answer is absolutely. This is perfect for anybody just interested in what cultural tourism is all about. There are no assumptions of any prior tourism related work. We understand that all of the participants have really varied backgrounds, both academically and professionally. So we make the assumption that everybody's kind of starting at the ground floor. So there's no prerequisites, no requirements for prior academic achievement. And yeah, we start from square one. I hope that answers your question. Another thing I wanted to mention is that our participants really span the United States. We usually get a few international participants. But we are very accustomed to having Indigenous participants from very remote and rural communities, and we are committed to the success of all of our participants in this program. What that means is that we understand that snowstorms create power outages. We understand that there are lots of hats that each one of our participants is usually wearing in their communities. We're used to our participants being on tribal council and having a full-time job and, you know, having various other charitable commitments and et cetera. And again, we are committed to seeing all of our participants succeed. So all the instructors are very flexible and working around those commitments to make sure that you get as much out of this program as you put in. And so yeah, we're very committed to seeing this through for each of our participants, and we are understanding of technical difficulties in particular. For those that have not experienced Blackboard before, we do a Blackboard tutorial before the program starts, so you're accustomed to the online learning platform and know where all the course materials are and have a lay of the land before the program starts.
And I would really encourage you, especially if you're new, to not be afraid to ask questions. I mean, all the instructors are doing this course because they're very passionate about it. They really want to, empower the next generation of tourism professionals. So don't sit there and, be confused by concepts. I think I guess the one downside is that it's a very dense program with a lot of information. So there is a risk of not falling behind, but you have a lot of information to absorb. So don't be afraid to reach out to the different instructors, ask for clarification, etc. And, do the reading and look at the different reading and resources, which will help reinforce the different concepts and help maybe even do them before the courses if you have time, so that you can really focus on the live lectures and, get the most out of that part of the coursework.
Talia.
Thank you, Talia.
Sherry, somebody asked how they can access the recording after this session.
Yes, we will be posting the webinar on the AIANTA website, and we will send the link to your email addresses. So, please follow us also at aianta.org/webinar for future webinars hosted by AIANTA. And if you are not a member of AIANTA and would like to be, please contact Gail Shihak, our Tribal Relations and Outreach Manager, and you can do so by visiting our website at aianta.org or send her an email at gchehak@aianta.org. And I'd like to thank both of you today for your presentations. If any of you have any questions, please reach out to us. You can contact Bianca Mitchell by email at bmitchell@aianta.org or any of the other presenters that you see here on the screen. And we do encourage you to register. It is a great course, and I think you'll really gain a lot of knowledge from attending. So with that, we appreciate you being here today. And thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, ladies, for an awesome presentation. And we look forward to seeing you again. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye. Stop sharing. End.